following last week's episode. I did a quick short on it. I wanted your thoughts on this, Kevin. Adrian Newey is stepping down from the team principal role at Aston Martin. The presumption is that Jonathan Wheatley is supposed to be stepping in. Aston Martin themselves have come out and not confirmed that. Audi themselves have not confirmed that, but there's been some movement within the teams. Khaki Kevin Walker, I gave my 10 cents about a week ago this time. What are your thoughts on all this?
Kind of sucks for Audi, because I really thought they were getting off to a pretty good start to the 2026 season. And the direction of the team as a whole, I thought, was under really good command from Jonathan Wheatley. That being said, that's exactly what Aston Martin needs. I understand that Adrian Newey is a legend in this game, and he wanted to try something new, wanted to try something that he felt maybe he could accomplish. Now, I have seen reports that Aston Martin always viewed his role as team principal as a temporary position. I don't necessarily believe that, because you had a lot of time to make an official hire for your team principal role, and you never did. So I think they did think that Adrian Newey could do it, and I think that this is the best move. Sucks for Audi and what they're going to end up having to do as far as replacing him in that team culture. But it's a really smart move by Aston Martin, if it becomes official, to get a guy in there that commands in a different way. You know, that's one of the things we saw from Drive to Survive, is that compare and contrast from him to Flavio Briatore. And I think that when we think of Aston Martin, we don't necessarily think of like, I think Lawrence Stroll holds a very strong hand and a very commanding hand when it comes to that team. And I don't know what that dynamic is going to look like, bringing in a quote-unquote nice guy like Jonathan Wheatley, but I do think it's the right move at the moment. And I think at the end of the day, I think Aston Martin had to do something. I mean, the season they've had to start is just downright horrendous, and it's just something they had to do.
Yeah, it's an interesting position to be in all respects. So Audi have already publicly named Mattia Binotto, the former Ferrari team boss, as their team principal moving forward. This is going to be their second team boss within 3 Grand Prix since officially becoming Audi. I think that's kind of big news. Wheatley stepped away effective immediately when all this started kind of coming out, but hasn't officially been confirmed as the next team boss for Aston Martin. So everything we say carries a little bit of a grain of salt. Who knows? Maybe Aston Martin pulled the rug out from underneath all this news, and who knows what they actually decide to do next.
We can get a confirmed report by the end of today, tomorrow. Like it kind of.
We record these on Wednesdays. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, a little peek behind the curtain. But we record these on Wednesdays. Sometimes news breaks that we're talking about in post. But starting with Audi, the way that you wanted to start there, for Audi, I think this is a much bigger deal than maybe it seems, because a lot has been made about how this affects Aston Martin and the pizzazz that comes with being affiliated with that. But the Swiss-based unit losing its first team principal due to his speculative desire to return back home to England, where he worked with Red Bull, by the way, with Adrian Newey for years and years and years. I think it's kind of a troubling sign for Audi moving forward, considering they're outside of that UK England bubble where like all the teams kind of inhabit like a 30 or 40 mile like space around like Silverstone, for instance. Being able to recruit and being able to pull in talent from other teams with a caveat of, you know, taxes are a little bit higher and you're going to be further away from your family it's already a hard enough draw, but having such a senior figure within the team leave, but particularly due to that exact issue, is just being homesick. And as somebody who's not a native Texan, for instance, I live halfway across the country from where I grew up in Virginia. You do feel homesick. You do want to be home. You do miss having those moments and those opportunities with like your direct family back home. I can understand the sentiment of wanting to go home, but I think for Audi, Jonathan Wheatley stepping away in particular, that's going to be a huge hole. We saw a lot of his leadership style in Drive to Survive's 8th season. He seemed really well liked within the, at the time, Kick Sauber unit. I'm sure he was a very integral part of their development into becoming Audi and the transition of what that brand was imagining what it was going to look like long term with him in the fold, they showed a lot of promise, and the car itself has actually looked pretty okay up to this point. I'm not saying that Mattia Binotto is necessarily a bad person or he's going to do a terrible job, but it seemed like Wheatley's vision and his version of leadership was received incredibly well. And I think it's understandable that he would be seen as a big loss for Audi. For the team, this is also just a major distraction. This is such an early phase of the season for something like this to happen, for a major leadership shakeup to happen.
And you got to think of a guy like, well, I was going to say, you got to think of a guy like, Gabriel Bortoleto, who's still learning his ways in Formula One, and had kind of gotten used to the leadership of Jonathan Wheatley and kind of getting a positive direction with Audi. And now that he's gone,
Binotto's now the guy they have to answer to. His leadership
and
style,
like you
his
said,
approach,
you prefaced it. It's not like Mattia Binotto's a bad guy or a bad leader, but he was out of the sport for a reason, one way or another. And it kind of sucks when you kind of fall in love with a leadership style and you fall in line with the leadership style from Jonathan Wheatley. It doesn't matter who you bring in after. It's not him, right?
Yeah.
So it just kind of sucks for them. And I don't...
Well, you're a huge college football fan, for instance, right? Like, it's like a recruit coming to your school and then that coach leaves for a different opportunity, right? Like, what does that feel like? But in professional sports, you don't just have the option to pick up and go, especially not in a sport like Formula One, to go follow that leader. You're just kind of stuck with whatever's left. Yeah, for Gabriel Bortoleto, for Nico Hülkenberg, these guys who signed up to be, to get reception from Wheatley, to get that level of leadership from Wheatley, to be a part of that project with Wheatley, to now having that complete organizational shift, that's a bigger deal, I think, than maybe is being reported or is being speculated on or is being looked at. And you're absolutely 110% correct. Like, that does change how you look at the rest of your season. It does change how you approach a race weekend, because how you have to answer to one guy and one leader and one boss is very different than the next guy and the next leader and the next boss. So it is a big shakeup. Moving to Aston Martin, though, what does this mean for Aston Martin in your eyes, Kevin?
It means that they need to turn this season around. And I don't know if this is the move that necessarily does it, but they need to change direction. There's a part of me that might wonder, is this because they were kind of feeling some pressure or some heat from Lawrence? Maybe they were feeling some pressure, some heat from Fernando. There's a lot going on there. Maybe they want to keep that seat appealing to Max in the future if it does become available. I don't really know what exactly was the choice. I just think this is a Band-Aid over a much bigger problem, which is the car. The car is the problem. Whether Adrian Newey is your team principal, Christian Horner is your team principal, or Toto Wolff's your team principal, the car is bad. The car is not drivable for an entire race at this moment. Hiring a new team principal does not help that, does not Band-Aid that car. So it's just a Band-Aid over a much bigger situation that I guess they're just trying to address for the future. But look, when S hits the fan, a move has to be made, and this is the move that they decided to make.
I think in the short term, whoever their official boss is going to be next, right? Because we don't have any official confirmation here, even if it is Wheatley, which, again, presumption being that. I think the move for Wheatley...
It's a step up for him.
It's a step up for him, but looking at it from the Aston Martin perspective, I think that Aston Martin, they believe that this is a great... maybe not great, but this is just the move that needed to happen. Pulling Adrian Newey away from the team principal role. He didn't want to be there as the team principal. He wanted to be there as the chief designer. That's what he's being paid for. That's what he was hired on to do. That's why he was getting all that huge bags of cash from Lawrence Stroll for. They believe that they have the potential to be a championship level team, a contender, if you will. If the feelings in Aston Martin from previous seasons are to be believed, this past offseason are to be believed, they believe they have the chance to contend. Is this position cursed? Is partly a question. I mean, it's had a lot of turnover. Otmar Zafnauer in 2021. Mike Crack had the job for a couple of years. Andy Cowell last year. Now Newey is gone from that role specifically. Jonathan Wheatley being able to step in. Lawrence Stroll has basically made an example of the question, why can't I just throw money at it? From Alonso to Newey to Wheatley next, to the hundreds of millions of dollars in investment made in the team facilities, the wind tunnels at Silverstone. Stroll is lining his ambitions well with cash aplenty. Why would Wheatley want to jump from Audi? Why would he want to jump from being one of the faces of that brand and their push into F1? Well, in the same role at Aston Martin, at a place willing to bring you back home, like I mentioned earlier, being homesick's a huge deal. I can understand that perspective. You're probably going to pay him a huge bag too. Audi were on the come up, but Aston Martin, even amid their current struggles, they got way deeper pockets backing them, courtesy of the Stroll. And having Adrian Newey behind you, I think, is a driving force behind this too. Designing and developing what you would hope is a future title contender as soon as they figure out how to work the Honda engine. There are problems to be addressed. There are problems that need to be fixed. Allowing Adrian Newey to step out of the team principal role and to just focus on doing his job, doing his portion of this work. Leave him to the car and allow Wheatley to handle the operations and the sponsors and be that bright, shiny face and to be that corporate face, for all those press conferences, for the debriefs, for all the big situations. Wheatley seems like a good guy for that. He's done a really good job with what, Sauber were last year, landing into a podium. That was his leadership, one way or the other. That's still a huge moment for him.
And I think another thing, when you're talking about reasons why he went to Aston Martin, speaking of Jonathan Wheatley, if the move does become official, I kind of hinted at it earlier, but if Aston Martin feel very comfortable, like you said, hey, we can solve anything by throwing money at it. If they feel very comfortable in their pursuit of Max Verstappen, if that pursuit becomes a reality, then if you're Jonathan Wheatley, you have to feel like, look, financially this makes sense. I'm going to get to go home again. And at the end of it all, I could end up with Max Verstappen. Even if that's a 10 to 15% chance.
That feels like a Hail Mary from where they are right now. But having that familiarity of Wheatley and Newey there to potentially lure away a Max Verstappen from Red Bull, who've seen a lot of exodus. We talked a lot about their changeover and what's new at Red Bull last week's episode. I could see that being an angle. My question is, will this work? You talked about it being a Band-Aid. With Wheatley presumably taking over next, I'm not sure. It's really hard to say just 2 races into these regulations, but reports and comments from Adrian Newey on the Aston Martin facilities, they're working to meet correlation and simulations and Honda's engine issues are some major setbacks. I think even with the Wheatley addition, it's still going to take the entire Aston Martin team, him included, to get a lot right in a short amount of time for this dream of them becoming a contender to come true in a short amount of time. I like the move on paper, though. I think Wheatley seems like a very good leader. He seems like the kind of guy in the paddock that, you would want to work for. There are certainly harsher, leadership styles we've seen. There are certainly maybe varying levels of, competence, depending on how you look at each team principal and how well they've all done. I think that his leadership style, this almost gentle parenting and being very supportive of everybody in the team, and we'll fix the issues as we find them. So far, it seems like it was working for a team that has this many issues at Aston Martin, for a team that has this many cracks in the foundation at the moment. A guy to walk in and start smoothing them over and going, look, here's what we do have, here's what we can build on. That's going to be a really, really, really strong voice to have in the paddock, to have in your corner, and to answer all the hard questions and put a nice little, Aston Martin corporate spin on it. Overall, I think this is a good hire. It's going to be another wait and see how well this pans out, but I have optimism for Aston Martin's future. I don't know if they're going to become contenders with this move, but I think that this move does nothing to pull them in the wrong direction. I feel like at the very least, this should still be a net positive from a leadership perspective. I think the Wheatley move for him and for the team probably makes sense from a number of different angles, but it does suck for Audi at the other side of this. I'm not saying Binotto's a bad leader, but you brought this up. If he was great at his job, he'd probably still be at Ferrari. There have been a lot of critiques of Binotto online, in the paddock, in the media. For him to be taking over, he does have experience for Audi. He can bring some level of leadership and insight, but I imagine there was a reason why he didn't start off as the team principal. That was the presumption when he was attached to the Audi project in the first place. Did not become the case. I don't know if there's going to be a level of reluctance that he has for that position, the way that Flavio Briatore didn't want to be the team principal for Alpine. We'll see how it all starts to shake out throughout the rest of the season. But I imagine that F1 Mean accounts are salivating at anything that's going to be coming out of the Alpine camp over the next, 20 or so weeks that we're going to get.
Yeah.